Hello and welcome back to another Theory Thursday. Today we are doing a chord analysis on the iPad. The tune, All the Things You Are, one of the most popular jazz standards of all time, written by Jerome Kern with lyrics by Oscar Hammerstein. Hammerstein? I'm not sure. 1939, that's what we're doing today. I've got my Casio 230 GA on today. And just a classic black tie. As always, if you've been enjoying the tune videos, the theory videos, the just the music videos, any of it, a like and subscribe is always appreciated. Of course, not necessary. Just keeps the channel going and the community growing. So, without further ado, chord analysis, All the Things You Are, 1939. Let's go. Here we go. All the Things You Are, 1939, Jerome Kern, Oscar Hammerstein. I'm not sure. We are just going to skip over the intro here. It's just a cool little phrase that happens at the beginning. Ultimately, it just leads to this F minor. So we won't dive too far into that. But let's take a look first up here about what key we're in. And then we've got 4 flats, which could mean A flat major, or it could be F minor. So let's take a look. First chord here we get on the head is an F minor chord. However, a dead giveaway for the key of F minor would be seeing E naturals everywhere. Now we do see one here, but we are completely outside of the key at that point. So we're not going to count that. And take a look at the last chord here. It's an A flat. And this whole first line here is in the key of A flat rather than F harmonic minor. So I'm going to say we are in the key of A flat major here just because of those reasons. So that's how we'll go about this. Now we won't stay there for long. Only the first line here. So A flat, 6 chord, simple line, 2, 5, into your 1. Now I'll try to change colors every time we change keys here. This D flat is a 4 chord in the key of A flat, and then all of a sudden we get this. Now, what the heck's going on here? I mean, there's a million ways you can analyze a line, right? It's my belief we are in the key of C at this point, and even here you could argue that this whole line is key of C, and this is acting as a tritone sub for a G chord. Like this whole measure could be G. But this chord is great because it's also in the key of A flat, but also has this F common tone with G7. So that's why it's like a mediary. So we're going to call it a 4 chord in A flat, but then starting here, all of a sudden we are in the key of C. And you can tell that by, we've got B naturals here, we've got E naturals here. There's no flats in the actual melody. So I think it's safe to assume that we are in the key of C. Now that ends right here. At this point, we go on. I'm going to change back to red. And we move to key of E flat. Now you say, John, what tells you we're in the key of E flat? First of all, this chord progression is a dead giveaway for key of E flat because it's a classic 6, 2, 5, 1. But also, take a look at the melody. We have an E flat here, which obviously is different than the E natural up here. But that E flat could be any, it could be we're back in A flat. It could mean we're in B flat. It could be, you know what I mean? But then if you keep looking, we keep going here and we get this D natural, which is the 7 of an E flat. It's the leading tone. So that tells me that we are in the key of E flat major. Okay? And that's this, starting right there. Now this is a 4 chord in the key of E flat. Now hopefully this is looking familiar to you, right? These 5 bars, you get the same 6, 2, 5, 1, 4, and then things start happening again. So starting right here, we are in the key of G. Now this is a little wonky because in the key of G, the 2 chord is an A minor, not an A minor 7 flat 5. So it could just be this is the mediary chord because there would be an A, C, E flat is the flat 5, right? So it could just be mediary to help your ear get to G. I mean, this, if you haven't heard this song, it's a fantastic song. And I think it switches between keys seamlessly. And I think maybe this is one of the reasons is because of these chords that have, oops, that's not right. These chords that have common tones. But for our purposes, this is acting as a 2 to the 5 to our new 1 chord of G major. Okay. And this will be, I think, the longest we stay in this key. So we don't end G until we get to about right here. So E7, you could mark this as a major 6 chord. But take a look at where we're going. Hitting this A minor. So this is acting as a 5 of 2. We get our classic 2, 5, 1 again. And that plays out to the end of this measure because you can see this beautiful G triad in the melody. Okay, and then things start to move again. As well as switch colors. Starting here. We are doing the same thing, but in the key of E major. So here's our 1 chord, here's our 5 chord, and this is the same exact thing that we saw up here with that A chord. In the key of E, the 2 chord would be an F sharp minor 7, not flat 5. However, it is acting like this. It is acting like a 2 chord. And this flat 5 might just be helping your ear transition from G to E, because take a look at what we have here. F sharp, A sharp, C. Okay. So it's acting as a 2. That's what it is. And honestly, you could also analyze this as a this is a 2-5 to E minor, right? In which case this would be a half diminished chord, and we just get deceived here. But like I said, there's a million ways to analyze a line. Okay, and that ends right there. Excuse me. Take a look at where we're going. Change colors here. So we are finally getting back to the key of A flat. I'm going to skip over this chord for just a second and take a look at this line and this line. They're exactly the same. Even the melody is the same. So it's safe to assume 6, 2, 5. I'll write that a little bit better. 5, 1. So that means this is just acting as a 5 of 6 to get to this F minor chord. Okay, same thing happens with here. We get our 4 chord, just like up here. But then something different happens. We don't get G7. We get G flat 7. And this whole thing, we stay in the key of A flat. So let's work backwards here. We have our 1 chord, 5 chord, 2 chord, and usually we'd get an F7 or an F minor 7 if you wanted to stay strictly within the key, but we don't get that. We get a B7 here. So what's going on there? Well, let's skip it and fill in what we do know. 3 chord. And then we have this weird chord. Okay, so what the heck is going on here? So this G flat is a flat 7 chord. Now, usually this leads to the 1 chord. We call this a backdoor dominant. So that's what's happening here. We get our 4 chord, we get our backdoor dominant, and then our ear is expecting an A flat here, but we don't get it. We get this 3 chord. Okay, so it's a deceptive cadence. And then we get this weird thing. B diminished. Now, I think it's just a passing chord. It's just stepwise motion. If you take a look at this, C down to B, down to B flat. It's just a nice passing chord. And we actually saw this in All of Me, this same chord, this diminished chord that's right above the chord you're headed to. So you could also think of it as a tritone sub, because the bass is exactly the same, because usually here, like I said, we'd have an F. A tritone sub would be, well, technically it'd be a C flat, right? But we get this B. So you could think of it as a tritone sub. You could think of it as a passing chord. I'm going to call it a passing chord just because of the stepwise motion and all of the common tones and leading tones that are getting us to this B flat minor. Okay. And then we already did this, and we get to the end here, and we get this 2 of 6 and 5 of 6. You say, John, what the heck is that doing there? Why are we headed to the 6? Well, take a look at the beginning of the tune. Starts with an F minor, so it only makes sense if you are going to restart it. You need to get to that F minor, and that's that. So there's a lot going on in the tune, quite a few key changes, but I think Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein did a wonderful job here about changing keys seamlessly and making it sound like there's nothing fishy going on, when in reality we have tons of key changes and a lot of great stuff going on in the melody. So I think that's enough information for today. Hopefully you enjoyed watching, and we'll see you for the next one.